The first shot was fired on a cold morning in the Kelak system. For 200 years, Kelax had been neutral ground. Humans had governed there, keeping peace between the Crossans and the Drath. Both species needed the rare metals found on Kelax Prime. Both species hated each other with a fury that stretched back 10,000 years. But humans had made them share. Human diplomats talked until tempers cooled. Human soldiers stood between armies. Human administrators divided the mining rights fairly. Now the humans were gone. The hatred remained. A Crossan mining ship accused a Drath transport of stealing ore. The Drath captain refused to be searched. Words became threats. Threats became weapons fire. Within hours, the Crossan Third Fleet arrived. Massive ships of crystal and light, armed with weapons that could crack planets. The Drath responded with their dreadnoughts, dark vessels covered in scales like the beings who built them. The battle lasted 16 hours. 4 million soldiers died. Ships burned in the void. The light of their explosions could be seen from 100 worlds. When it was over, neither side had won. Both sides wanted revenge. High Arbiter Vorn of the Crossans called for emergency peace talks. He sent messages to every species. He begged for calm. He pleaded for negotiation. Nobody came. The Valari trade minister saw opportunity. With the Crossans and Drath fighting each other, they could not defend their outer territories. Valari fleets seized 3 Crossan colony worlds in a single week. 2 million Crossans were killed or forced to flee. The Morath Collective, silent for a century, finally moved. They were a hive species, billions of individuals sharing one mind. Now they saw weakness. Morath swarms descended on 2 Valari agricultural planets. They consumed everything. The crops, the buildings, the people. When they left, nothing remained but bare rock. The Syndicate of Fel, oldest of the Council species, broke their non-aggression treaties. Their raiders attacked everyone. They took what they wanted. They killed anyone who resisted. Within 3 months, the entire galaxy was at war. Commander Nari O watched from Nova Busan. Her screens showed a map of Council space, covered in red markers. Each marker was a battle. Each battle was death. The Drath have lost 40% of their fleet, she reported. The Crossans are worse. The Valari are fighting on 3 fronts. The Morath are expanding faster than anyone can stop them. Dr. Minho Baek stood beside her. His face was pale. How many dead? He asked. Hundreds of millions, so far. It will be billions before the year ends. Ambassador Yuna entered the command center. She looked at the map. She said nothing. They are calling for us, Nari said. All of them. Every species. They want us to return. The messages had been coming for weeks. Some were demands. Return immediately, or face consequences. Some were pleas. We are dying. Please help us. Some were threats. We know where you are. We will find you. Yuna read each one. She remembered every insult, every stolen colony, every time a Valari had called her a meat child, every time a Crossan had laughed at human lifespans, every time the Council had voted against them. Tell them no, she said. Minho looked up. Ambassador, millions are dying. I know. We could stop this. Our fleet, our diplomats, we could end the wars before they destroy everything. We could, Yuna agreed. And then what? They would thank us for a month, a year. Then they'd find another reason to hate us. Then they would go back to treating us like servants, like children, like lesser beings who exist only to solve their problems. She turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, but there was pain behind them. Deep, terrible pain. Do you know why we left, Minho? Not because they stole our colonies. Not because they insulted us. We left because nothing we did would ever be enough. We gave them everything. Our science, our soldiers, our diplomats, our very lives. And they still saw us as meek children. They still thought we were beneath them. She pointed at the map. This is what they are without us. This is who they really are. Killers, thieves, monsters who cannot even pretend to be civilized without humans holding them together. So we let them destroy themselves? We let them see the truth. We let them understand what they have lost. And then maybe, if enough of them survive, they will be ready to treat us as equals. Nari spoke quietly. And if they all die? Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then they will die, and we will continue, and we will build something better without them. The command center was quiet. Outside the windows, stars burned in the darkness. Beautiful, peaceful, indifferent to the suffering below. Back in council space, the wars continued. Cities burned, fleets shattered. Species that had existed for millions of years faced extinction. The Droth retreated to their fortress worlds. The Volari split into factions that fought each other as much as their enemies. The Crossans cracked and crumbled, their crystal bodies breaking under the weight of endless war. And in the empty halls of the Galactic Council, Arbiter Vorn sat alone. The other representatives were gone. Some were dead. Some were leading armies. Some were simply hiding. He looked at the empty seats. 12 species had once gathered here. 12 voices had once spoken as one. Now there was only silence. He thought about the humans, the meat children, the short-lived creatures he had dismissed so easily. We were fools, he whispered to the empty room. We were all such fools. But there was no one to hear him, and even if there had been, it was already far too late. 2 years had passed since the humans left. The Galactic Council no longer existed. There was no vote to end it, no ceremony, no final meeting. It simply stopped. The Great Hall where 12 species had gathered for 300 years now floated empty in space. Its lights still burned, its systems still worked, but no one came anymore. Of the 12 species that had ruled the galaxy, only 7 remained. The Morath had consumed 3 civilizations completely. Their hive mind grew larger with each conquest, hungrier with each meal. A coalition of survivors had finally stopped their expansion, building a wall of weapons and warships around Morath's space. The wall held, for now. The Volari had torn themselves apart. Civil war split them into a dozen factions. Their beautiful homeworld, once covered in gardens and crystal towers, was now a ruin. Fires burned in cities that had stood for 50,000 years. The Crossans were dying. Not just from war, but from the wasting disease that still had no cure. The research had stopped when the humans left. Now, whole generations crumbled to dust. Arbiter Vorn was dead. His own people had killed him. A faction of Crossans blamed him for driving the humans away. They said he had doomed their species. They were probably right. The Drath hid behind their fortress walls and refused to speak to anyone. The Syndicate of Thel had lost half their worlds to raiders and revenge. Even the species that had survived were broken, scattered, afraid. Trillions were dead. Trillions more would die before the wars truly ended. On a small station at the edge of empty space, Elder Kessa of the Thel sat alone in a dark room. She was ancient, even by Thel standards. She had lived for 12,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched species evolve and die. But she had never seen anything like this. The collapse was not just about war. The wars would have been bad enough. But there was something deeper. Something worse. The species of the galaxy could no longer work together. They could not trade. They could not research. They could not even talk. Without humans to translate between their incompatible minds, They were strangers to each other. Words meant different things. Agreements fell apart. Simple conversations became impossible. Kessa remembered a human diplomat she had known, long ago. A young woman named Sohi, small and fragile, with a lifespan shorter than a Fell's afternoon nap. Sohi had negotiated the Treaty of Seven Suns. She had brought together species that had hated each other for millennia. She had listened to each side, understood their fears, and found a way to make peace. How can you understand being so different from yourself? Sohi had smiled. I don't know. We just can. Maybe because we are young. Maybe because we are small. We have to understand others to survive. It is not a choice for us. It is who we are. Kessa had not understood then. She understood now. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest or the wisest. They did not have the best technology or the greatest empires. But they could connect. They could bridge gaps that no one else could bridge. They could look at a Drath equation and a Valaria motion and a cross in harmony and somehow see the same truth in all of them. They were the thread that held the galaxy together, and the galaxy had thrown them away. Kessa stood slowly. Her ancient bones ached. Her heart beat weakly in her chest. She did not have much time left. A few centuries, perhaps. Maybe less. But she had to try. She walked to her communication center and activated the long-range transmitter. It was powerful enough to reach the Veil Nebula. Powerful enough to reach the humans, if they were listening. She took a breath and began to speak. This message is for the humans who once lived among us. For Ambassador Una Park, if she still lives. For any human who will hear. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. We were wrong. The Council was wrong. I was wrong. We did not understand what you were. We saw your short lives and thought you were weak. We saw your strange minds and thought you were primitive. We did not see the truth. She paused. The words were hard to say. The Fel were proud. They did not apologize. But pride meant nothing when civilization was burning. You were the bridge between us, the only bridge. Without you, we cannot speak to each other. We cannot trade. We cannot cooperate. We cannot think together. And so we are dying. Not just from war. We are dying because we are alone. Because we pushed away the only species that could make us whole. Tears ran down her ancient face. She did not wipe them away. We do not ask you to save us. We do not deserve to be saved. We ask only that you hear us, that you know we finally understand, that you know we are sorry. She transmitted a set of coordinates, a point in empty space, far from any world or station. If any human is listening, we will wait at these coordinates, for as long as it takes. We will wait for you, and if you never come, we will understand. You owe us nothing, less than nothing. She ended the transmission. Then she sat in the darkness and waited. Outside her window, stars burned and died. Ships carried refugees across broken trade routes. Worlds fell silent. And somewhere, beyond the Veil Nebula, the humans watched. Would they come? Would they help? Would they forgive? Kessa did not know. She only knew that without them, there was no hope. The humans were the heart of the galaxy, and the galaxy had cut out its own heart. Now it was bleeding to death. The human fleet emerged from the Veil Nebula on a morning that would be remembered for 10,000 years. 12 ships, that was all. 12 small vessels against the darkness of a broken galaxy. They were not warships. They carried no great weapons. They were simply transports, bringing humans to a meeting that might change everything. Or might change nothing at all. Ambassador Una Park stood at the window of the lead ship, watching the stars. She was older now. Her black hair had turned gray. Lines marked her face, carved by years of hard decisions and sleepless nights. Behind her, the human delegation prepared for what lay ahead. Captain Jisoo Han commanded the fleet. She was the daughter of Admiral Sek Han, who had died peacefully 2 years ago, never seeing the galaxy he had once protected. Dr. Minho Bak was still alive, still working, still hoping. Commander Nari O walked with a cane now, but she had refused to stay behind. "We are approaching the coordinates," Jisoo announced. Yuna nodded. "How many ships are waiting?" "Dozens, from 7 species." 7. Only 7 had survived. The Thel, the Drath, what remained of the Crossans, the Valari, the others. Half the galaxy was dead or destroyed. The other half was barely holding on. The human ships slowed and stopped. Around them, alien vessels waited in silence. Once these species had commanded fleets of thousands. Now they had sent only a handful of ships to this meeting. It was all they had left. The meeting took place on the lead human transport. A large room had been prepared, simple and clean, with chairs arranged in a circle. No high seats, no thrones. Everyone was equal here. Elder Kessa of the Thel was the first to arrive. She was impossibly old, moving slowly, supported by 2 younger Thel. When she saw Yuna, she stopped. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. "You came," Kessa whispered. "We came." Others followed, representatives from each surviving species. Some Yuna recognized. Most were new faces, risen to power after the old leaders died or fell. One of them was a young Drath named Rill. He was barely more than a child by Drath standards, thrust into a position of authority when his elders retreated behind their fortress walls. His scales were dark, his eyes uncertain. When everyone was seated, silence filled the room. No one knew how to begin. No one knew what to say. Finally, Rill spoke. "Why?" he asked. His voice was quiet, almost afraid. "Why would you help us, after everything we did to you, after everything we said?" Yuna considered the question. She thought about the insults, the stolen colonies, the 300 years of being treated as less than nothing. She thought about the day she had walked out of the council hall, knowing she was condemning millions to death. She thought about Sok Han, who had spent his life protecting species that despised him. She thought about the human scientists who had translated between alien minds without ever being thanked. She thought about all the humans who had given everything to a galaxy that gave nothing back. And she thought about what made humans different, what made them who they were. "Because we are human," she said simply, "and humans help. It is not wise, it is not strategic, it is simply who we are. We see someone in pain, and we try to help. Even if they hurt us, even if they never asked, even if they will never understand." She stood and walked to the center of the circle. "We are not returning to save you. We are not strong enough for that. Your wars have destroyed too much. Your hatred has killed too many. We cannot fix what you have broken." The representatives looked down. Shame was heavy in the room. "But we can help you build something new." Yuna reached into her robe and pulled out a small object. It was a seed, an earth seed, from a plant that had grown on humanity's homeworld for millions of years. "This is how humans think," she said. "We plant seeds. We wait. We grow. We do not expect to see the tree ourselves. We plant for our children and their children and all the children who will come after." She placed the seed on the table. The old council was broken from the beginning. It was built on hierarchy, on the idea that some species were better than others. That is why it failed. That is why you failed. She looked at each representative in turn. "If you want our help, you must build something different. Something based on equality, on the understanding that every species, young or old, strong or weak, has something to offer." Kessa spoke, her voice trembling. "And if we fail? If we return to our old ways? Then we will leave again. And this time, we will not come back. The silence stretched. Then slowly, Rill stood. He walked to the table and looked at the seed. The Droth do not understand humans, he said. We never have. Your minds are chaos to us. Your lives are too short to matter. Your bodies are fragile. By every measure we know, you should be nothing. He reached out and touched the seed with one scaled finger. But you are not nothing. You are the bridge, the connection, the thread that holds everything together. We were too proud to see it, too stupid to understand. He looked up at Yuna. I cannot speak for my people. They are hiding behind walls, afraid of the galaxy they helped destroy. But I can speak for myself. I will learn. I will change. I will try to be worthy of the help you offer. He did something that no Drath had ever done before. He reached out and took Yuna's hand. It was an ancient human gesture, one species reaching out to another, one being choosing connection over isolation. One by one, the other representatives stood. They came to the table. They touched the sea. They made their promises, their commitments, their hopes for a future they could not yet imagine. Outside the ship, the stars burned in the darkness, the same stars that had watched the Galactic Council rise and fall, the same stars that had seen empires born and civilizations die. But in that small room, something new was beginning. The humans had returned, not as servants, not as children, not as bridges to be walked upon and forgotten. They had returned as equals, and the galaxy, broken and bleeding and barely alive, reached out to take their hand. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent. It did not care about species or civilizations, or the small creatures that lived and died among the stars. But humans cared. Humans always cared. And that, in the end, was what made all the difference. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built. It floated in space, a station made of glass and metal, where 12 species came together to rule the galaxy. For 300 years, they had kept peace. For 300 years, they had made laws. And for 300 years, humanity had been their youngest member. Yuna Park stood at the center of the hall. She wore the silver robes of a human ambassador. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no hope. Behind her stood 3 other humans. Admiral Siak Han was old now, his hair white, his back still straight like a soldier. Dr. Minho Bak held a small computer in his hands, recording everything. Commander Nari O watched the alien faces around them with sharp eyes. Above them, the representatives of 11 species looked down from their seats. The Crossans were beings of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies and made rainbows on the walls. The Volari were tall and thin, with skin like blue silk and eyes that never blinked. The Drath were covered in dark scales, their faces impossible to read. And there were others, the Morath with their hive minds, the Fel with their ancient wisdom, species that had traveled between stars when humans still lived in caves. High Arbiter Vorn of the Crossans raised one crystal hand. The hall became silent. The vote is complete, Vorn announced. His voice was like glass breaking. The motion passes with 9 in favor, 2 against, 1 abstaining. Humanity's colony rights in the Outer Rim are hereby cancelled. The 17 human worlds in that region will be given to senior council members. Yuna did not move. This was the 7th time. 7 times in 2 years, the council had voted against humanity. First they took their mining rights, then their trade routes, then their research stations. Now, 17 worlds, 17 planets where millions of humans had built homes and raised children. The council has decided, Vorn continued, that humanity is too young to manage such territories. More experienced species will govern them better. A soft laugh came from the Volari section. Someone whispered the word that humans had heard so many times. Meat children. That was what they called humans. Short-lived creatures of flesh and blood, who would be dead before a Valari finished its morning meal. Yuna looked up at Vorn. "May I speak?" "You may." She took a slow breath. 300 years. That was how long humans had been part of this council. They had joined as equals, or so they thought. They had given everything. Their ships protected trade routes. Their scientists solved problems that other species could not solve alone. Their diplomats ended wars that had lasted for thousands of years. And this was their reward. Laughter and stolen worlds. The slow removal of everything they had earned. "I have a statement from the United Human Government," Yuna said. Her voice was calm. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We end all treaties, all agreements, and all obligations. We are leaving." The silence that followed was complete. Even the Morath, who communicated through a shared mind, stopped their constant whisper. Then Vorn laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind through broken windows. "Leaving? And where will you go, Ambassador? The galaxy is ours. Every safe system, every habitable world, every trade route. You cannot survive alone." "We survived before we found you," Yuna replied. "We will survive after we leave you." "The outer darkness," said a Drath representative. His name was Krell, and he was one of the two who had voted against the motion. "You mean to go beyond the Veil Nebula, into the uncharted regions?" The Valari found this especially funny. The regions beyond the Veil were dangerous. Strange energies, unstable stars, anomalies that destroyed ships without warning. No species had ever colonized there. "You will die," Vorn said simply. "All of you. Your entire species will be gone within a generation." Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad. "Perhaps, but we will die free. We will die with our dignity, and we will not spend another day being told that we are less than you." She turned and walked toward the exit. Sek, Minho, and Nari followed her. Their footsteps echoed in the silent hall. "Wait," Krell called out. "Ambassador Park, this does not have to be the end. We can negotiate. We can find a solution." Yuna stopped, but did not turn around. "For 300 years we negotiated. For 300 years we found solutions. We gave and gave and gave, and you took and took and took. The time for solutions is over, Representative Krell. You made your choice. Now we make ours." She walked out. The doors closed behind her. In the Great Hall, the representatives began to argue. Some were angry. How dare the humans leave? Others were worried. What would this mean for trade, for research, for the peacekeeping fleet that humans largely commanded? But most of them were simply relieved. The troublesome humans were finally gone. No more of their strange ideas about equality. No more of their demands for fair treatment. No more of their unsettling ability to adapt and grow and change. "Good riddance," the Valari Trade Minister said. "They were always more trouble than they were worth." The others agreed. Within an hour, the council had moved on to other business. Within a week, they had divided the human territories among themselves. Within a month, the last human ship had vanished beyond the Veil Nebula. The Galactic Council continued as it always had. The 12 species became 11. Nothing changed. At least, nothing changed yet. But in the empty spaces where humans used to work, in the quiet rooms where humans used to solve problems, in the dark corridors where humans used to walk, something was beginning to fail. Like a machine missing a small part, like a body missing a single organ. The council did not notice. They would not notice for months, and by then, it would be far too late. 6 months passed. The galaxy continued to turn. Stars burned. Ships traveled between worlds. Trade flowed through the great routes that connected 1,000 systems. Everything seemed normal. But Coordinator Thrix of the Volari knew something was wrong. She sat in her office on the trading station called Silver Dawn. Screens surrounded her, showing numbers and charts and shipping routes. For 40 years, she had managed trade between species. She knew every pattern, every rhythm, every flow of goods across the galaxy. And now, those patterns were breaking. A shipment of medical supplies from the Crossan worlds was 3 weeks late. Nobody knew where it was. A fleet of cargo ships had taken the wrong route and ended up in Drath space, nearly starting a war. Prices for common goods changed by 50% in a single day, then changed back, then changed again. Thrix pulled up the trade management systems. These were the programs that controlled everything. They predicted demand, they calculated routes, they made sure that goods arrived where they needed to go. Humans had built these systems. She had never thought about it before. For 300 years, humans had quietly managed the details of interspecies trade. They wrote the software, they trained the workers, they solved the problems that nobody else wanted to solve. It was not glamorous work, it did not bring glory or fame, but it was necessary. Now the humans were gone, and nobody knew how their systems actually worked. Thrix sent a message to the Volari Trade Ministry. "We have a problem," she wrote. "We need to find human experts to help us understand these systems." The reply came quickly. "The humans are gone. We will adapt. This is not your concern." She tried to adapt. Everyone tried to adapt. But the problems grew worse. On the research station called Eternal Light, Dr. Y.I. Kell of the Drath faced a different kind of failure. He was a scientist. For 30 years, he had worked on a cure for the Crossan wasting disease. This sickness killed millions of Crossans every year. Their crystal bodies would slowly crack and crumble until nothing was left. It was a terrible way to die. The cure was almost complete. Drath scientists had found the cause. Volari chemists had created possible treatments. Crossan doctors had tested them on patients. The research was 90% done. But the final 10% required something impossible. It required understanding. The Drath thought in mathematical patterns. Everything they knew was expressed in numbers and equations. The Volari thought in emotions and colors. Their knowledge was felt, not calculated. The Crossans thought in light and vibration. Their science was like music. Humans could understand all of them. A human scientist could read a Drath equation, translate it into Volari emotional concepts, and then express it as Crossan harmonics. Nobody knew how they did it. Their minds were flexible in ways that other species could not match. They were bridges between worlds that could not otherwise connect. Dr. Kell stared at his research. He had data from 3 species. He could read none of it except his own. The Volari sections were meaningless colors. The Crossan sections were noise. "We need a human translator," he told the station commander. "There are no humans," the commander replied. "They are gone." "Then find one. Pay anything. This cure will save millions of lives." But there were no humans to find. Not in Council space. Not anymore. The research stopped. The cure was abandoned. The Crossans continued to die. Far away, beyond the Veil Nebula, Admiral Tay of the human fleet watched everything unfold. The humans had built a new home. They called it Nova Busan, a great station hidden in the dangerous space that other species feared. From there they watched their old neighbors struggle. "The Crossans and the Drath are moving warships to their shared border," Tay reported to Ambassador Yuna. "The old hatred is coming back." Yuna nodded slowly. She sat in her office, looking older than she had 6 months ago. The weight of her decision pressed on her every day. She had chosen to leave. She had chosen to let the Council face the consequences of their actions. But knowing it was right did not make it easy. "How long before they fight?" she asked. "Months, maybe less. Without our peacekeeping fleet between them, there is nothing to stop them." The peacekeeping fleet. For 200 years, human ships had patrolled the spaces between hostile species. Human commanders had trained in warfare unlike any other. Humans had a gift for violence that the galaxy both feared and needed. When two species wanted to kill each other, humans would stand between them. Not because they were the strongest, but because they understood conflict. They knew how wars started, they knew how wars ended, and they knew how to stop wars before they began. Now there was no one to stand between the Crossans and the Drath. Should we warn them? Tay asked. No, Una said quietly. They made their choice. They have to live with it. Millions could die. Millions will die. And then billions. And then maybe, finally, they will understand what they lost. Tay was silent for a long moment. This is hard. Yes, Una agreed. It is the hardest thing I have ever done. But they need to learn. The galaxy needs to learn. Or this will never end. They will never see us as equals. They will never treat us with respect. Sometimes, the only way to show someone your value is to let them feel your absence. Back in Council space, the problems continued to grow. Ships were lost, research failed, old enemies remembered old hate. And in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the representatives argued about small things, while their civilization began to crack. They did not see it coming. They could not see it coming. The humans had been invisible for 300 years. The quiet workers, the patient builders, the bridges between worlds. Now they were gone, and the bridges were falling.